A city where the sun itself refuses to shine. A place where no child has ever drawn their first breath, where no dog has ever barked, where the very stones seem to pulse with secrets older than memory. Imagine standing at the edge of the known world, staring into a darkness so absolute that even shadows fear to enter. The citizens hide their faces behind masks, not from shame, but from something far more terrifying, something they dare not speak of, even to each other. They say the greatest sorcerers of our age, Melisandre the Red, Quaitha the Shadow, came from this cursed place. They say dragons were born here when the world was young. They say if you listen closely to the wind that blows from the east, you can hear the whispers of the dead singing through grass that grows pale as bone. But here is what they do not tell you. 8,000 years ago, when the long night fell and the world screamed in eternal darkness, when the White Walkers brought winter that knew no end, one city stood at the edge of annihilation and made a choice so terrible, so absolute, that it transformed them forever. They became something else, something necessary, and they have been paying the price ever since, generation after generation, while the rest of the world sleeps soundly, never knowing the sacrifice that keeps the darkness at bay. Tonight we journey to Asshai by the Shadow, the Forbidden City, the place where magic is as common as breathing and just as dangerous, and I am going to tell you secrets that will change everything you thought you knew about the Game of Thrones. So before you settle in, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy the deep lore I explore here, and let me know in the comments where you are tuning in from and what time it is for you. It is always fascinating to see who is joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. Get into your blanket and let us ease into tonight's journey together, into the Shadow. Our story begins at the eastern edge of the known world, where the Jade Sea meets the mouth of a river, black as oil. A river called the Ash, and beside it, rising from the mists like a nightmare carved in stone, stands Asshai. If you placed all of King's Landing within Asshai's walls, the great capital of the Seven Kingdoms would be swallowed whole, with room to spare. Yet, despite its massive size, the city feels empty, silent, wrong. The buildings are constructed entirely of black stone, but not the kind of stone you know. This is different, oily, ancient, the same mysterious material found in the ruins of Yin in Soforius, in the base of the High Tower in Old Town, in places scattered across the world that predate all known civilizations. No one knows who built with this stone. No one knows where it came from. Even at noon, the sun barely penetrates the perpetual gloom that hangs over Asshai like a funeral shroud. The light here is wrong, filtered through something invisible, turning day into twilight. The river Ash runs black and thick beside the city, and locals warn that nothing should drink from its waters. Nothing living can survive it. Walk through the markets of Asshai, and you will see wonders and horrors in equal measure. Merchants sell dragon glass and dragon eggs turned to stone. They sell poisons from lands whose names you have never heard. They sell ancient texts written in languages that have been dead for thousands of years. And every single person, every merchant, every customer, every soul you pass wears a mask. Not decorative masks, not ceremonial masks. Full face coverings that hide their features completely. In a city of thousands you will never see a single face. And here is the detail that chills the blood. There are no children in Asshai, none. No babies crying in the night. No young voices calling to their mothers. No one in this ancient, massive city has ever been born here. Every citizen came from somewhere else and chose to stay, chose to put on the mask, chose to become one of them. No animals survive within the city walls either. No horses, no dogs, no cats, no birds singing at dawn. Only humans can endure Asshai, and even they are changed by it. Into this haunted place comes our seeker, a maester from the citadel in Old Town, traveling with two companions, a masked merchant of Asshai, who has agreed to serve as guide, and a former priest of Ruler, the Lord of Light, who abandoned his temple to seek the true origins of his faith. They have come seeking answers about the prophecies, about Asshai, about the long night that is returning. They have come to learn why Melisandre, the Red Woman who stood beside Stannis Baratheon, who birthed shadow assassins and saw visions in flames, came from this place. But what they will discover is far more terrifying than any of them imagined. The markets of Asshai sprawl through winding streets like a labyrinth designed by madmen. Our maester walks slowly, methodically, observing everything. His training at the Citadel taught him to notice details others miss, and here in this twilight city, every detail matters. The stalls sell objects that would make the merchants of King's Landing weep with envy or terror. Dragon-glass daggers rest beside jars of powder that shimmer with colors that hurt to look at. Ancient jewelry crafted from metals that seem to drink in what little light exists. Books bound in leather that might not have come from any animal known to the maesters. But it is the people that disturb him most, not just the masks, though those are unsettling enough. It is the way they move, silent, purposeful, as if every action has been rehearsed 1,000 times. There is no laughter here, no raised voices, no sounds of life, as he knows it. His guide, the masked merchant, leads them deeper into the city. The merchant speaks rarely, and when he does, his voice carries an accent unlike any the maester has heard in all his travels across Essos. They pass shadowbinders gathered in small groups, their robes blacker than the stone around them. One raises a hand, and flame springs to life in her palm, cold and blue. Another stares into a bowl of dark liquid, and speaks of events happening thousands of miles away. A third opens his mouth, and shadows pour out like smoke, taking shapes that might be animals, or might be something far worse. The former priest stops walking. His face has gone pale. He served the Lord of Light for 20 years, performed the rituals, spoke the prayers, saw visions in the flames. But what he is witnessing here makes his faith look like a child playing with candles. "This is where it all began," he whispers. "Everything I was taught, everything I believed, it came from here." The merchant nods slowly. "Rithlaw's servants learned their craft from us. Long ago, before your red temples spread across Essos, shadowbinders of Asshai already knew how to read the flames. They reach a building larger than the rest, ancient beyond measure, the Library of Asshai. Inside, shelves stretch into darkness that even torches cannot fully pierce. The texts here are not like those in the Citadel. There are no neat categories, no organized sections. Scrolls lie beside bound volumes. Stone tablets rest against parchments, so old they crumble at a touch. The maester's hands tremble as he carefully unrolls a scroll written in High Valyrian, but a dialect older than the freehold itself. The text speaks of Asshai as it was before, in an age when the city was not shrouded in perpetual gloom. It describes gardens where flowers bloomed, markets where children played, a harbor where ships arrived carrying goods and families seeking new lives. "That cannot be right," he says aloud. "Asshai has always been like this, a city of shadow and sorcery." The merchant shakes his head. "You see only what Asshai has become, not what it was, not what it sacrificed." They find more texts, each one adding pieces to a puzzle the maester did not know existed. Stone carvings removed from buildings throughout the city show scenes of celebration, of festivals, of life. The people in these ancient images do not wear masks. Their faces are clear, smiling, human. Something changed this place, something catastrophic enough to transform a thriving city into the haunted shadow it is today. The priest discovers a mural hidden behind centuries of dust. He brushes it clean with shaking hands. The image shows dragons, massive and terrible, flying above a city that can only be Asshai. But these dragons are not attacking. They are being born, emerging from great eggs set in nests of flame and shadow. The dragons came from here. The priest breathes. Before Valeria, before the freehold, dragons were born in Asshai. The merchant's voice carries something that might be pride. We taught the Valyrians how to bind dragons, how to master them. The knowledge came from Asshai first. Everything came from Asshai first. The maester's mind races through everything he knows of history. The Valyrian freehold rose to dominate the world through their mastery of dragons. They built an empire that lasted 5,000 years. But if the dragons originated here, if the knowledge came from Asshai, then Valyria itself was just a student of older, darker masters. He finds another text, this one speaking of prophecies. The words are difficult to translate, written in a language that predates even Old Giscari. But certain phrases stand out clearly. Azor, Ahai, the prince that was promised, the long night. All of it recorded here, in books written thousands of years before these events supposedly happened in Westeros. How did you know? He asks. How did Asshai know about the long night before it occurred? The merchant turns away, looking into the shadows that fill the library's far corners. Because we have seen the long night more than once. The one your histories remember was not the first. It will not be the last. The temperature in the library seems to drop. The maester feels ice forming in his chest. Everything he has learned, every history he has read, suddenly feels incomplete, like he has been reading only the final chapter of a story that began long before his world existed. They discover astronomical charts, next complex beyond anything the Citadel possesses. The stars are mapped with precision that should be impossible without modern instruments. But these charts are ancient, drawn on materials that have not been made in living memory. The stars form patterns, cycles, celestial events that repeat across vast spans of time. One chart in particular catches the maester's attention. It shows a specific alignment of stars and planets. Beneath it, written in multiple languages, is a single word repeated over and over: darkness. This alignment, he says, pointing with a trembling finger. When does it occur? The merchant leans close to examine the chart. He is silent for a long moment. When he finally speaks, his voice is barely audible. It is happening now. The stars are moving into this position as we speak. The same alignment that occurred 8,000 years ago when the long night fell upon the world. The priest makes a warding gesture, fingers crossed in the sign of Rolor. Then the prophecies are true. The darkness is returning. Azor Ahai must be reborn to face it. But the maester is still staring at the charts, because he has noticed something else. These astronomical records do not just predict the long night. They show earlier occurrences, the same stellar alignment appearing again and again throughout history, each time marked with symbols indicating catastrophe. The long night is not a single event. It is a cycle, something that has happened before and will happen again, regular as the seasons but measured in thousands of years instead of months. How many times, he whispers, how many times has the darkness come? The merchant does not answer directly. Instead, he leads them deeper into the library, to a chamber sealed behind a door of that same oily black stone. The seal is ancient, covered in warnings written in languages long dead, but the merchant knows how to open it. Inside, they find something that makes the maester's blood freeze. Bodies. Not corpses, but preserved forms, kept in some kind of stasis that defies natural law. They look human, but wrong. The proportions are slightly off. The bone structure too angular. These are not the remains of any race the Maester knows from his studies. What are they? The priest asks, horror thick in his voice. The people who lived here before, the merchant says quietly, before the transformation, before Asshai became what it is now. This is what we were. This is what we gave up. The Maester moves closer, studying the preserved forms. They show no signs of disease or injury. Whatever killed them was not violent. It was gradual, a transformation rather than a death. And in their frozen faces, he sees something that will haunt him forever. Resignation, acceptance, as if they knew what was happening and chose not to fight it. What did this to them? He manages to ask. The merchant walks to the far wall, where a final inscription waits. The words are in the common tongue, written recently compared to everything else in this ancient place. Someone wanted to ensure future visitors could understand. The Maester reads it aloud, his voice shaking. The cost of holding back the darkness is measured not in gold or blood, but in everything that makes us human. We chose to pay it. We choose to pay it still. May those who come after understand that some sacrifices are necessary. Some prices must be paid. Some lights must be extinguished, so that others may continue to burn. The priest sinks to his knees. The Maester stands frozen, mind reeling. Everything they thought they knew about Asshai, about magic, about the history of the world, has just been shattered. The merchant's voice cuts through their shock. Now you begin to understand. Asshai did not fall to darkness. Asshai chose darkness, chose it deliberately, chose it to serve a purpose that required the sacrifice of everything we were. And we have maintained that choice for 8,000 years, waiting for the cycle to turn again, waiting for the darkness to return, waiting for someone to finally break the wheel and end this eternal nightmare. Outside the library, the perpetual twilight of Asshai presses against the windows like something alive, and somewhere in the distance, carried on wind that has no earthly source, comes a sound like singing, high and thin and inhuman. The ghost grass of the shadowlands beyond, giving voice to secrets the city has kept for millennia. The Maester realizes they have only scratched the surface. The real mysteries lie deeper still, and something tells him that by the time they uncover the whole truth, they will wish they had never come to this cursed place at all. 3 days pass in Asshai, though it is hard to measure time in a place where the sun never properly rises. The Maester, the priest, and their masked guide spend those days buried in the library, piecing together fragments of a history the rest of the world has forgotten. What they discover rewrites everything. Long before Valyria, before even the Giscari Empire, before the Andals crossed into Westeros and the first men raised their holdfasts, there existed another power, the great Empire of the Dawn. It ruled the lands of Yi, Leng, and Asshai, under a dynasty of god-emperors who claimed descent from the Lion of Night and the Maid of Light herself. The texts speak of an age of wonders, cities of pearl and jade, gardens that bloomed with flowers unknown in the current age, technologies that harnessed the power of the sun itself. For thousands of years, the great Empire of the Dawn stood as the pinnacle of human civilization, its influence stretching across the eastern continent. Then came the Bloodstone Emperor. His true name has been lost to time, or perhaps deliberately erased. The histories call him only by his title, spoken with a reverence that feels more like fear. He was the younger son, not meant to rule. His elder sister held the throne by right of succession, continuing the unbroken line of the god-emperors. But the Bloodstone Emperor wanted power. He cast down his sister, took the throne by force, and in doing so broke a covenant that had held for thousands of years. The texts grow darker here. The Maester reads passages that make his hands shake. The Bloodstone Emperor did not simply murder his sister. He perverted every sacred tradition of his people. He cast down the true gods and raised in their place something else, something that came from the sky. A black stone. The same oily black stone that forms the buildings of Asshai. The same material found in ruins across the world. The Bloodstone Emperor found it, or it found him, and he built temples to worship it. He practiced dark arts, took a tiger woman as his bride, a creature half human and half beast, feasted on human flesh. The maester pauses in his reading, looking up at the merchant. This cannot be literal. Surely these are myths, legends meant to illustrate moral failures. The merchant's mask turns toward him. Behind the lacquered surface, eyes that have seen too much regard him with something like pity. The meisters of your citadel believe that anything they cannot explain must be myth. But you are in Asshai now. Here you will learn that myths are simply truths you were not ready to hear. The priest takes up another scroll, his hands more steady now despite the horrors they are uncovering. He reads of what followed the Bloodstone Emperor's corruption. The texts from this period are fragmentary, many destroyed, but enough remains to paint a picture of catastrophe. The sun began to dim. Not suddenly, but gradually, day by day growing weaker. Crops failed. Animals grew strange and violent. The people of the great empire looked to their god emperor for salvation. But the Bloodstone Emperor only intensified his dark rituals, sacrificing more and more to the black stone he worshipped. Then the darkness came. The long night. The histories of Westeros speak of it as a terrible winter that lasted a generation. The White Walkers emerging from the far north with their armies of the dead. The Night's King ruling from the Night Fort, Azor Ahai, rising with his burning sword to drive them back. But the texts in Asshai tell a different story, or rather, they tell the same story from the other side of the world. It was not just Westeros, the priest says, awe and terror mixing in his voice. The long night fell everywhere, across all the known world at once. Yeti records speak of the darkness. So do the histories of Leng. Even in distant Sothorios, their primitive legends tell of a time when the sun died and demons walked the earth. The maester finds a map, beautifully preserved, despite its age. It shows the world as it was during the long night. Darkness spreads from 2 points. One in the far north of Westeros, where the lands of Always Winter lie. The other here, in the east, from the place where the Bloodstone Emperor ruled. 2 sources, 2 origins of the same catastrophe. The implications stagger him. The long night was not a natural disaster. It was not even a supernatural invasion from a single direction. It was the result of the Bloodstone Emperor's corruption, his worship of the Black Stone and whatever entity it represented. His actions tore something in the fabric of the world itself, allowing darkness to pour through from 2 opposite ends of the earth. The White Walkers in the north, the maester says slowly, working through the logic. And here in the east what came through. The merchant stands and walks to a different section of the library. He returns with a book bound in scales. Dragon scales, the maester realizes with a chill. The merchant opens it to a page marked with a strip of shadowed dark silk. The illustration shows creatures that resemble the White Walkers of northern legend, but different. Where the others are beings of ice and cold, these are creatures of pure shadow, darkness given form and malice. The text calls them the demons of the night, the shadow binders. Not the shadow binders who live in Asshai today, practicing their arts and reading omens. These were something else, the originals. The things that came through when the Bloodstone Emperor broke the world. They are not gone, the merchant says quietly. They were pushed back, sealed away, but not destroyed. And Asshai stands at the place where the seal is weakest, where the boundary between the world of light and the realm of shadow grows thin. The priest has found another text, this one speaking of heroes, of the fight to end the long night. In Westeros, they speak of Azor Ahai, a hero who forged a burning sword called Lightbringer. To complete the blade, he had to temper it in the heart of his wife, Nissa. Her sacrifice, her love, her life, gave the sword its power. With Lightbringer, Ahai drove back the darkness. He fought the White Walkers for years before finally defeating them. The long night ended. The sun returned. The world was saved. But the texts in Asshai add something the legends of Westeros leave out. Ahai was born in Asshai. The hero who saved the world came from this very city, was trained here, learned the secrets of shadow and flame in these black stone buildings. The sword Lightbringer was not just forged through sacrifice, it was created using knowledge that only Asshai possessed. The combination of fire and shadow, light and darkness, bound together through the ultimate act of love and grief. They say he will return, the priest whispers. The prophecy speaks of Azor Ahai being reborn. When the red star bleeds and darkness gathers, the prince that was promised will be born again amid smoke and salt. The Maester has been doing calculations in his head, checking dates and celestial events against the charts they found earlier. His face has gone pale. The red star, he says. The red comet that appeared in the sky years ago. When Daenerys Targaryen's dragons hatched, that was the sign. The merchant nods, slowly. The same comet that appeared in the sky 8,000 years ago, when the first long night began. The cycle is repeating. The darkness is returning, and somewhere in the world, Azor Ahai has been or will be reborn. But there is something else. Something the Maester has noticed in the text that speaks of the end of the first long night. After Azor Ahai defeated the White Walkers in the north, after the sun returned and the world began to heal, the war was not over. Someone still had to seal the breach in the east. Someone had to ensure the demons of the night could not return. Asshai volunteered. The city gathered its greatest shadowbinders, its most powerful sorcerers, its wisest leaders. They performed a ritual that took 13 days and 13 nights. A ritual that required sacrifice on a scale that defies imagination. They bound themselves to the darkness, became wardens of the seal, tied their very essence to the task of keeping the shadow contained, and in doing so, they transformed, lost the ability to bear children, lost the ability to sustain normal life within their walls, became something between human and shadow themselves. The masks came later, adopted to hide the gradual changes the darkness wrought on their features, to spare visitors the sight of what they had become, to maintain some small dignity in the face of their terrible purpose. 8,000 years, 8,000 years, Asshai has stood guard, while the rest of the world forgot the long night, dismissed it as legend. Asshai remembered, while Valyria rose and fell, while kingdoms warred and dynasties crumbled, Asshai endured, unchanging, eternal, paying the price so that others would not have to. And now the cycle is turning again. The stars align as they did before. The darkness stirs in its prison. The seal that Asshai has maintained for 8 millennia is weakening. The White Walkers march in the north, and in the east, beyond the ghost grass, beyond the Shadowlands, something else is waking. The demons of the night, patient and hungry, sensing that their time is coming again. The Maester closes the last book with shaking hands. He looks at the priest, sees his own horror reflected in the other man's eyes. They came seeking knowledge about prophecies and ancient magic. They found something far worse. The truth. The terrible, unbearable truth. The long night is not a myth. It is a cycle, and the world is about to learn that lesson again. We have to warn them, the priest says. Westeros, the 7 kingdoms, King's Landing. They think the White Walkers are their only threat. They have no idea what is coming from the east. The merchant shakes his head. They will not believe you. The world has forgotten. They chose to forget. It was easier to dismiss Asshai as a place of dark sorcery than to acknowledge what we sacrifice for them. Then what do we do? The Maester demands. If the darkness is returning, if the long night comes again, what purpose does knowledge serve if we cannot act on it? The merchant is silent for a long moment. Then he stands, his robes pooling around him like liquid night. You must go deeper, into the Shadowlands themselves, to the 5 forts, to the places where the seal is strongest. Only there will you understand the full scope of what is coming. Only there will you find the knowledge necessary to survive what approaches. The priest stands as well, his face set with determination, despite the fear in his eyes. Then we go. We see this through to the end. The Maester knows he should refuse, should take what they have learned and flee this cursed city, return to the citadel and their warm libraries and comfortable lies. But something in him has changed. The truth once seen cannot be unseen. The burden once accepted cannot be abandoned. How far are these 5 forts? He asks. Far enough that few return, the merchant says, but not so far that the journey is impossible. The path leads through the Shadowlands beyond Asshai, through the ruins of the great empire, through places where reality itself grows thin. Then we leave at dawn, the Maester says, surprised by the steadiness in his own voice. The merchant tilts his head, and the Maester imagines a sad smile behind the mask. There is no dawn in Asshai, scholar. There is only the endless twilight. But yes, we leave when you are ready, and may whatever gods still listen have mercy on us all. The journey from Asshai northeast toward the Grey Waste takes them through lands that seem to exist outside normal reality. The guide procures horses, though he warns they will not survive long once they enter the deeper shadow. Animals cannot endure what lies ahead. They ride through the Shadowlands beyond Asshai first, that cursed region where even the people of Asshai fear to travel. The ghost grass grows here, taller than a mounted man, pale as bone, and rustling with sounds that might be wind, or might be something else entirely. The grass sways when there is no breeze. It seems to lean toward them as they pass, hungry, yearning. Old wives' tales in distant lands speak of the ghost grass. They say when it covers the world, all life will end. The Maester once dismissed such stories as primitive superstition. Now riding through endless fields of the stuff, he is not so certain. There is something alive about this grass. Something aware. It does not grow like normal plants. It spreads like an infection. The ruins begin after 2 days of riding. Remains of cities from the great empire of the dawn, abandoned thousands of years ago when the long night fell. The architecture is unlike anything in Westeros or even Valyria. Buildings of stone and crystal that still glow faintly in the darkness, as if they remember when the sun shone bright overhead. Statues of beings with strange proportions, not quite human, stand watch over empty boulevards. Who were they? The priest asks, staring at a statue 50 feet tall depicting a woman with eyes that hold no pupils, only swirling patterns of light. The first, the merchant answers. Before the long night, before the Bloodstone Emperor, these cities held millions, families, children, hope for the future. All of it ended in a single generation. They camp in one of the ruins that night, though sleep comes hard. The darkness here is not the comfortable darkness of normal night, but presses against you, thick and heavy, like being underwater. Sounds carry strangely. Whispers seem to come from everywhere and nowhere. The Maester keeps his hand on his dagger, though he knows steel will be useless against whatever truly haunts these lands. The priest tries to light a fire, speaking prayers to Risolor. The flames sputter and burn low, reluctant, as if even fire fears this place. He stares into the weak light, attempting to see visions as he was taught. His face goes white. "What is it?" the maester asks. "What do you see?" The priest's voice shakes. "Nothing. The flames show me nothing. Rose light does not reach here. We are beyond the reach of the gods." They leave at first light, though first light here means only a barely perceptible lessening of the absolute darkness. The horses grow more skittish with each mile. By the third day, one of them collapses, simply gives up and dies, despite being in perfect health only hours before. They redistribute the supplies and continue on foot. Then, on the fourth day, they see them rising from the grey waste like the bones of the world itself. The 5 forts. Each fortress stands 1,000 feet high, made of the same black oily stone as Asshai. They stretch in a line across the landscape, evenly spaced, forming a wall against something to the north. The wall in Westeros is impressive, 300 feet of ice stretching from sea to sea. But the 5 forts dwarf even that mighty construction. And they are old, far older than the wall, older than recorded history, built in an age when giants walked the earth and the sun shone bright even in these eastern lands. As they approach the nearest fort, the maester studies its construction with the eye of a scholar. No mortar binds the stones. Each block fits perfectly against its neighbors, gaps so tight that a knife blade could not slip between them. The walls rise smooth and sheer, impossible to climb without wings. Guards watch from the battlements, not soldiers in the traditional sense. These are shadowbinders, warriors trained in arts that make them more than human and less at the same time. They wear armor of dragon scales and wield weapons forged from metals unknown in Westeros. The merchant raises his hand in a gesture of peace. The rope ladder drops from far above. They climb. The interior of the fort is vast beyond comprehension, not just a military structure, but a city unto itself. Barracks, training grounds, libraries, temples. Thousands could live here, and perhaps thousands do. The Shadowbinders maintain watch in shifts, some serving for decades before rotating back to Asshai. They are brought before the commander, an ancient man whose mask covers features too changed to show the world. He listens as the merchant explains their purpose, why they have come so far, what knowledge they seek. The commander is silent for a long time. Then he gestures toward a window in the eastern wall. "Come, you have traveled far to see the truth. You might as well see it." They follow him up countless stairs, climbing to the very top of the fortress. The view from the battlements steals the breath from their lungs. To the south, the grey waste stretches away, lifeless and empty. But to the north, the land changes. The darkness there is different, absolute. A black so complete that looking at it hurts the eyes. It is not the absence of light, it is the presence of something that devours light. "The lands of always winter in Westeros," the commander says, his voice muffled by the mask. "That is what the Northerners call the place where the White Walkers dwell. They think it is the only such region in the world. They are wrong." He points northeast toward that absolute darkness. There lies the counterpart, the other wound, where the demons of the night were first spawned when the Bloodstone Emperor broke the world. The White Walkers are creatures of ice and death. The demons are beings of shadow and hunger, two sides of the same corruption, two aspects of the same enemy. The maester stares into that darkness and feels something staring back, something vast and patient and utterly inimical to all life. His mind recoils from the contact, but not before he understands. The enemy is not just the White Walkers, it is not even the Night King, powerful as he may be. The true enemy is something far greater, an entity, or perhaps many entities, that exist in the spaces between light and dark, life and death. The long night was not an invasion, it was an infection, reality itself breaking down, allowing things from outside to seep through. "How long have you stood watch?" the priest asks, awe in his voice. "Since the end of the first long night," the commander answers, 8,000 years. "We keep the vigil, we watch for signs. We send warnings that no one heeds, and we prepare for the day when the darkness comes again." "That day is now," the merchant says quietly. "The signs are all present. The red comet, the birth of dragons, the white walkers marching in the west. And here," the commander's mask turns toward the darkness, "here they stir. We have felt it for years now. The demons testing the barriers, probing for weaknesses. The seal holds, but it grows thin. Each year, each month, each day, it requires more power to maintain, more sacrifice." He leads them back inside, down to a chamber deep within the fort. On the walls are maps, ancient beyond measure. They show the world not as it is, but as it was, before the long night, before the darkness came. 2 points are marked clearly, one in the far north of Westeros, one here in the grey waste beyond the 5 forts. These are the breach points, the places where the world was torn open. The wall was built to seal the western breach, the 5 forts guard the eastern one. But the maps show something else. Lines connecting the 2 points, patterns of energy or force that flow between them. The 2 breaches are not separate. They are linked, 2 expressions of the same wound. Closing one without closing the other accomplishes nothing. The darkness will simply flow through the remaining opening. "This is why Azor Ahai must be reborn," the maester says, understanding dawning. "Not just to defeat the White Walkers, to heal both breaches simultaneously, to seal the wound in the world itself." The commander nods. The first Azor Ahai drove back the White Walkers in the west, while Azor Ahai sealed the breach in the east. But it was not a permanent solution, it was a postponement, buying time for the world to prepare for when the cycle turns again. 8,000 years, the priest says. 8,000 years of preparation, and yet Westeros knows nothing. The 7 kingdoms squabble over thrones and titles while the true war approaches. "They always forget," the commander says, and there is infinite weariness in his voice. "It is the nature of humans, to forget, to dismiss, to pretend that horrors which happened long ago cannot happen again. We do not have that luxury. We remember, we must remember, because if we forget, there will be no one left to stand guard when the darkness returns." They spend 3 days at the 5 forts, learning all they can. The Shadowbinder warriors train constantly, practicing techniques of combat that blend magic and steel. They maintain weapons capable of harming creatures that normal blades pass through as if they were smoke. They study the darkness, map its movements, track its growth. And they wait, always waiting. For 8,000 years they have waited. On the 3rd night, the maester stands watch on the battlements with one of the Shadowbinder warriors. The warrior is young, perhaps 30, though it is hard to tell with the mask. They stand in silence for a time, staring into that absolute darkness to the north. "Do you ever want to leave?" the maester asks. "Return to Asshai? Live a life outside these walls?" The warrior tilts her head, considering, "I was born in Asshai, trained from childhood for this duty. I have served here for 15 years. In another 15 I will rotate back, take my place among the city's Shadowbinders, train the next generation, and when my time comes, I will put on the true mask and join the seal itself, add my power to the binding that holds back the night. This is the only life I have known, the only life any of us have known since the long night." "And you never resent it?" the priest asks, joining them. "The sacrifice, the burden." The warrior is quiet for a moment. "Would you resent a farmer for planting crops? A shepherd for tending sheep? This is our purpose, our duty. The rest of the world sleeps safely. because we stand watch. That is enough. But the Maester hears the lie beneath the words. He hears the longing, the grief, the weight of 8,000 years of sacrifice, pressing down on this one young woman and all those like her. They are heroes that no one will ever thank, saviors that the world has forgotten. They give their lives, their futures, their very humanity, and receive nothing in return but the knowledge that they did what was necessary. It is the most terrible form of heroism, the kind that asks for everything and offers nothing, not glory, not gratitude, not even recognition, just the cold comfort of duty fulfilled and a world saved that will never know how close it came to ending. On the fourth day they prepare to leave. The commander provides them with supplies and a map showing the route back to Asshai. He also gives them something else. A small stone, black and smooth, carved with symbols that hurt to look at directly. Take this to the Council of Shadow, he says. They will understand its meaning. The time for secrets is ending. The time for action approaches. Asshai must decide whether to reveal itself to the world or continue to fight alone. The journey back is faster, the path known now, but the knowledge they carry weighs heavier than any physical burden. The Maester keeps thinking of the warrior on the wall, of her quiet acceptance of a fate that would crush most people. He thinks of the thousands like her, standing watch at the edge of the world, fighting a war that never ends. They pass through the ruins again, those ghost cities of the great empire. This time, the Maester sees them differently, not as ancient failures, but as warnings, reminders of what happens when the darkness is not held back, when the vigil fails, when the guardians fall. The ghost grass still sways around them, singing its song of death. But now he understands that even this cursed vegetation serves a purpose. It marks the boundary, shows how far the corruption spread during the first long night. The grass will not grow beyond a certain point, as if the land itself remembers and refuses to heal completely. They reach Asshai after 10 days of hard travel. The city looks exactly as they left it, unchanged and unchanging. The perpetual twilight, the masked citizens moving through silent streets, the black stone buildings that have stood for longer than memory. But the Maester sees it with new eyes now. This is not a city of evil, as so many believe. It is a city of sacrifice. Every person here has chosen to give up everything that makes life worth living, so that others can have that life. They have no children because they gave up that future. They have no joy because they shoulder the burden of eternal vigilance. They hide their faces not from shame but from mercy, sparing the world the sight of what their sacrifice has cost them. Asshai is not the darkness. Asshai is the shield against the darkness. And the world has spent 8,000 years cursing the shield for being dark, never understanding that it became dark to protect the light. The merchant leads them back to the library, to the deepest chambers where the Council of Shadow waits. He presents the stone from the 5 forts. The council members, ancient beyond reckoning, pass it among themselves. They do not speak, but the Maester senses communication happening beyond words, beyond sound, through the shadows themselves. Finally, the eldest of them turns to address the visitors. The voice that emerges from behind the mask is like wind through dead trees, barely human. You have seen the truth now. You understand what we are, what we have done, what we continue to do. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? The priest speaks first, his voice steady despite the fear the Maester knows he feels. I will return to my temple. I will teach the true history of the Lord of Light's faith, that it was born from Asshai's sacrifice, not despite it. That shadow and flame are not enemies but necessary complements. That the war we fight requires both. The elder nods slowly. And you, scholar of the Citadel? The Maester takes a breath. His entire worldview has been shattered and rebuilt in the span of weeks. Everything he thought he knew about history, magic, and the nature of reality has proven false or incomplete. But from the ruins of his old certainties, something stronger has emerged. "I will document the truth," he says. "I will write down everything we have learned, and I will find the one who must hear it. The one the prophecy speaks of, Azor Ahai reborn. Whether that is Daenerys Targaryen with her dragons, or Jon Snow at the wall, or someone else entirely, I will find them, and I will tell them what they must do." "You understand the burden this places on you?" the elder asks. "To know the truth is to become responsible for it. You cannot unknow what you have learned. You cannot escape the duty that comes with understanding." "I understand," the Maester says, and he does. He has become like the Shadowbinders at the Five Forts. Not a warrior, but a guardian nonetheless. A keeper of knowledge that must not be lost again. The council members rise as one. They lead the three visitors deeper still, into chambers that have not been opened in generations. Here lie the most ancient records, the original texts from before the long night, the true history of the world. And here, in the deepest chamber of all, they find the prophecies, not the fragments and hints that have spread across the world, not the corrupted versions that priests and scholars argue over, the original prophecies, complete and unambiguous. The Maester reads them with shaking hands. Every word changes something. Every line reveals new layers of meaning. By the time he finishes, he knows what must be done. He knows why Daenerys must come to Asshai. He knows why Jon Snow must learn his true parentage. He knows why the dragons and the dire wolves and the red comet all matter. He knows the ending, and it breaks his heart. Because the prophecy is clear. Azor Ahai will save the world, will heal the breaches, will end the long night forever. But the cost will be everything. Just as Nissa gave her life to forge Lightbringer, just as Asshai gave up its humanity to maintain the seal, Azor Ahai must sacrifice everything that makes life worth living to win the final victory. The hero will save the world and lose themselves in the process. Perhaps lose their life. Perhaps something worse. Perhaps become like Asshai itself, a necessary darkness holding back a greater one. "Does it have to be this way?" the priest asks, reading the same texts. "Is there no other path?" The elder's voice carries infinite sadness. "We have searched for 8,000 years. If there were another way, we would have found it. The darkness can only be defeated by those willing to embrace shadow without being consumed by it. It requires sacrifice of such magnitude that few could even comprehend it, let alone accept it." The Maester carefully copies the prophecies, his hand steady despite his churning emotions. This knowledge must not be lost. When the time comes, when Azor Ahai stands ready to face their destiny, they must know the full truth, not the sanitized version, not the hopeful interpretation, the brutal, uncompromising reality. They spend one final night in Asshai. In the morning they will leave, return to the world beyond, carry their burden of knowledge back to the lands of the living. But that night, the Maester cannot sleep. He walks the streets of Asshai alone, watching the masked citizens go about their eternal routines. He wonders about their lives, their thoughts, their dreams, if they dream at all. Do they resent what they have become? Do they regret the choice their ancestors made 8,000 years ago? He will never know. The masks hide more than faces. They hide hearts and souls warped by centuries of sacrifice. But he understands now that the masks are also mercy for the wearers and the watchers both. As dawn approaches, or what passes for dawn in Asshai, he returns to find the priest and the merchant waiting. They have a long journey ahead, back to the world of light, back to carry warning of the coming darkness, back to find the heroes who must save everyone, even if it costs them everything. The Council of Shadow gathers to see them off. The eldest speaks one final time. Tell them we are still here, still watching, still hoping. Tell them that when the darkness comes, Asshai will stand as it always has. But this time we cannot stand alone. This time the whole world must face the truth or fall into eternal night. The choice is theirs. It has always been theirs. We can only hold back the darkness. We cannot defeat it. That task falls to others, to the ones the prophecy speaks of, to Azor Ahai reborn. The three travelers bow and take their leave as they pass through the black stone gates of Asshai. The Maester looks back one final time. The city stands silent and dark against a lightning sky, a city of ghosts, a city of heroes, a city the world has feared and reviled for 8,000 years, never knowing that it was fear and reverence that should have filled their hearts instead. They ride south toward the Jade Sea, toward ships that will carry them back to lands where the sun shines bright and people laugh without masks. But none of them will ever truly leave Asshai behind. The knowledge they carry has changed them forever, made them part of that ancient vigil, whether they wear masks or not. The war is coming. The long night returns. And somewhere in the world, heroes are being forged in fire and shadow, preparing for a battle 8,000 years in the making. A battle that will determine not just the fate of Westeros or even Essos, but the fate of the entire world. And Asshai, patient and eternal, watches and waits as it always has, standing guard at the edge of darkness, holding the line, paying the price, until the very end of days. The ship carries them away from Asshai, captained by a woman from Koth who asks no questions. In these eastern waters, silence is survival. The Maester spends days reviewing his notes, but one question haunts him. Where did dragons truly come from? The Citadel taught that dragons were born in Valeria's volcanic mountains, discovered by shepherds in the 14 Flames. But the texts in Asshai told a different story, an older one. He finds the priest on deck, staring at the sunset with tears in his eyes. After weeks in Asshai's gloom, proper sunlight feels like a miracle. The oldest texts in our faith, the priest says when asked, they mention dragons coming from the shadow, from beyond Asshai. They describe dragons as bridges between realms, creatures of fire and shadow both. The merchant joins them, mask still in place despite being far from the city. Dragons existed before human civilization, before cities, before written history. They lived in the world when our ancestors huddled in caves. But Valyria mastered them, the Maester says. Valyria learned from Asshai. In the early days of the Freehold, they sent emissaries east, seeking knowledge and power. Asshai taught them the dragon-binding rituals, the blood magic necessary to claim a dragon, the secrets of hatching stone eggs. We gave them the keys to an empire. The priest understands. You expected them to help when the darkness returned. Instead, Valyria grew proud. They conquered the Rhoynar and destroyed the Giscari Empire. When Shadowbinders came seeking aid, the Dragon Lords turned them away. They thought themselves gods. The Maester asks the question carefully. The doom, was it natural? The merchant's silence stretches long before he answers. Valyria delved into magics. They didn't understand. They used dragonfire to crack the earth, bent the world to their will. Blood magic and fire magic, twisted together without Shadow's balance. The world pushed back. They destroyed themselves. They forgot that power without purpose leads to ruin, that dragons are not weapons but forces of nature. Nature always collects its due. The 14 Flames erupted simultaneously, drowning the peninsula in fire. The greatest civilization ever known, erased in a single night, and Asshai endured, because they learned what Valyria never did. That sacrifice and restraint are the only true powers. Daenerys Targaryen's eggs, the priest says. How did she hatch them when they'd been dormant for over a century? Where did those eggs come from? The merchant asks. The maester's breath catches from the shadow lands beyond Asshai. Illyrio gave them to her as a wedding gift. Eggs kept in the shadow for generations, absorbing its energies, waiting. When the red comet appeared and prophecies began to unfold, they were sent west, given to the one who might fulfill the ancient words. Asshai reborn, the maester whispers. Perhaps, or merely a herald. The shadow binders watch and guide, but they cannot force prophecy that must happen naturally. The priest asks about Melisandre. She proclaimed Stannis as Asshai. Was that guidance? Melisandre sees much but understands less than she believes. She left Asshai before completing her training. She mistakes power for purpose, sees what she wants in the flames rather than what is truly there. Stannis had strength and will, but not the capacity for the required sacrifice. The Maester has been calculating bloodlines and dates. Jon Snow, son of Rhaegar and Lyanna, fire and ice, dragon and wolf. If prophecy requires someone who bridges opposites, who better? The merchant considers this. You see the patterns. Yes, Jon Snow matters. The blood of old Valyria, and the first men, born during war, raised in shadow, not knowing his truth, already died and been reborn. The signs gather around him. And Daenerys? Who says there is only one? The word for prince in High Valyrian is gender neutral, and the prophecy speaks of 3 heads of the dragon. Not one hero but 3, working together, sacrifice shared among them. 3 dragons, 3 heads. The Maester feels pieces falling into place. Daenerys represents fire, the Targaryen legacy. Jon carries both fire and ice, but there must be a third. Perhaps, the merchant says, or perhaps the third is someone we haven't yet considered. The future shifts with every choice made. All we know is that when darkness comes, there must be those willing to embrace both fire and shadow, willing to pay the price. They stand in silence as stars emerge. The same stars that shone during the first long night. The same stars aligning now into patterns last seen 8,000 years ago. The dragons didn't come only to Valyria. The merchant says finally, in ages past, when Asshai was still a city of light, shadow binders traveled the world bringing dragons to many lands, to Yi Ti, to Sothorius, and yes, to Westeros. The Starks knew of dragons, knew the power needed to fight darkness. When the long night came, they allied with Asshai. When it ended and the wall was raised, Asshai left gifts, knowledge, power, dragons. There are dragons sleeping under Winterfell, the priest breathes. Perhaps, or perhaps their bones lie there, power long faded. The North keeps its secrets, but the Starks have always known more than they say. Winter is coming is not just warning, but promise. When winter comes, the Starks will remember what must be done. Jon Snow, raised as Ned Stark's bastard, taught to value duty above all, sent to the wall, where he became Lord Commander. Everything preparing him for a purpose he doesn't yet understand. The son of ice and fire, standing where the first great battle was fought. And Daenerys across the sea, believing herself the last Targaryen, building her power, learning to rule, hatching dragons dormant for generations. All of it moving toward convergence, toward the moment when fire and ice must unite, or the world falls into eternal darkness. The ship sails on through the night. Behind them, Asshai fades into memory and shadow, but the knowledge remains. The burden accepted, the truth known. Dragons are not just weapons, they are the key, the bridge between shadow and flame. Valyria learned to command them but forgot to respect them, paid the price for that arrogance. Daenerys has awakened them. Jon Snow will learn to unite with them. and together with whatever third the prophecy requires, they will face the darkness Asshai has held back for 8,000 years. Or they will fail, and the long night will come again, forever. The merchant watches the stars. The comet has passed, but the signs continue. The dead rise in the north, dragons grow strong in the south, and in Asshai, Shadowbinders prepare for the battle they've always known would come. Everything converges toward the moment of final choice. And if they fail, the Maester asks, then Asshai stands alone, as it always has. And when we fall, nothing will stop the darkness from consuming everything. The long night will be eternal. The dragons will be extinguished forever, along with all hope, all light, all life. The weight settles over them like a shroud, but the Maester doesn't turn away. He has seen too much. The only path is through acceptance, through preparation, through carrying this knowledge to those who need it most. The dragons were born in shadow. They must return to shadow one final time, not to die, but to transform, to become what they were meant to be. The fire that burns away eternal night, the hope that survives in absolute darkness. If those who bear them are willing to pay the price, the port of Volantis rises from morning mist like a fever dream. The black walls tower over the old city, built from fused stone like ancient Valyrian roads. Within those walls live descendants of dragon lords, clinging to memories of a dead empire. Outside sprawls a city 5 times larger, teeming with slaves, merchants, and red priests preaching from every corner. The traveling priest insists they visit the great temple. He has questions about the origins of their faith, about truth hidden beneath centuries of doctrine. The Red Temple of Volantis is the largest in the world, capable of holding thousands. Its walls blood red, its towers topped with eternal flames. Inside, hundreds of acolytes chant praises to R'hllor, asking protection from the Great Other, from darkness waiting to consume the world. The high priest receives them in a chamber lined with ancient texts. He is old, red robes worn soft with age, eyes sharp despite the years. He knows immediately why they've come. "You've been to the shadow," he says. "Not a question. You want to know if everything we teach is a lie." The traveling priest steps forward, weathered by what he's seen. "I want to know where R'hllor came from. The true origin, not stories for initiates, but real history." The high priest pours wine and speaks. 8,000 years ago, when the long night fell, the world screamed. Darkness covered everything. People turned to anything, offering hope, any power that might push back the night. He pauses, gathering courage. In Asshai, Shadowbinders fought darkness with darkness. They became guardians of the boundary, but not everyone could follow that path. Some needed a different way, a path of light instead of darkness, of fire instead of shadow. "R'hllor," the Maester says quietly. "R'hllor is what we call the force opposing the Great Other. But understand, these are not gods as simple folk imagine. They are fundamental forces of the universe, principles made manifest through magic and belief." The traveling priest leans forward. "Then the faith was born from Asshai. All magic flows from the same wellspring. Shadow and flame are not opposites, but complements. Two faces of the same power. Asshai understood this. To fight darkness, you need shadow to understand it, and flame to drive it back. So they taught both arts, sent priests and shadowbinders across the world to prepare." He retrieves an ancient book, pages illuminated in gold and crimson. The first red priests came from Asshai. They learned their craft from shadowbinders. Visions in flames, glimpsing the future, seeing across distances, all taught by those who mastered shadow magic. But instead of using darkness to peer into darkness, priests learned to use fire, to look through flame, and see truth. Melisandre, the Maester says. She came from Asshai, but doesn't seem to understand this. She speaks of ruler as if he were a god with fixed plans. The high priest's face grows sad. Melisandre is powerful, perhaps the most powerful priestess of our age. But she left Asshai before completing her training. She learned techniques, mastered rituals, gained ability to birth shadow creatures and read flames. But she never learned wisdom. That power without context is dangerous. That prophecy is warning, not instruction. She believed Stannis was Azor Ahai, the traveling priest says. She saw what she wanted to see, a great king who would validate her power. But Azor Ahai is about sacrifice so terrible most would rather let the world burn than accept it. Stannis had strength and will, but not the capacity for that level of sacrifice. The high priest looks every one of his many years. Melisandre serves the light, but doesn't understand shadow. She was taught in Asshai, but didn't stay long enough to learn the deepest lesson, that shadow and flame must work together, that the hero who saves the world must walk through both. The Maester asks carefully, her appearance. She seems young, but rumors say she's much older. Shadow magic taught in Asshai can extend life for centuries if you're willing to pay the cost. Melisandre may be 200 years old, perhaps older. The ruby at her throat is not just a focus for power, it's a glamour, hiding what she truly looks like beneath, what shadow has made her. The traveling priest's hands tremble, years following Melisandre's example, and now he learns she's as much cautionary tale as inspiration. Thoros of Myr, he says, just a priest, a drunk, who barely believed. Yet he brought Beric Dondarrion back from death 6 times. How? Because true power comes not from understanding, but from faith. Thoros believed, without needing to understand, that purity of intention opened a channel for power to flow through him. He became a conduit for forces he couldn't comprehend. Yes, he brought Beric back, but at what cost? Each time, Beric lost more of himself, more humanity. He became less alive, even as he continued to live. That's the price of resurrection. Life, but not as it was. The Maester thinks of Jon Snow, murdered at Castle Black. If red priests can bring back the dead, Jon might return, but what will he become? What will he lose? The power to resurrect also came from Asshai. The Maester says, everything came from Asshai. All magic, all knowledge of the supernatural. Asshai stood at the boundary when the world broke open during the long night. They learned secrets that should never have been known. They chose to preserve that knowledge, pass it down, prepare for when darkness would return. Red priests are part of that preparation. We are the light to Asshai's shadow, the flame to their darkness, 2 halves of the same defense. He paces now, energy returning. When the long night returns, and it will, the world will need both. Shadow binders of Asshai, holding the line in the east. Red priests inspiring people, giving hope, showing that light can drive back dark. The dragons that bridge both powers, and heroes willing to embody all of it. Shadow and flame, ice and fire, death and life. The traveling priest bows his head, struggling with everything he's learned. His faith hasn't been destroyed but transformed, complicated, made real in ways both more powerful and more terrifying. What should I do? He asks quietly. You teach it, not to everyone. Most cannot handle the complexity. They need the simple story, clear divisions between light and dark. But to those with capacity to understand, you teach truth, that ruler and the great other are forces, not gods, that shadow is not evil, but necessary, that the war we fight is about maintaining balance, ensuring neither light nor shadow consumes everything. He hands the priest a smaller book, black leather with a red flame embossed. This contains teachings for only the highest initiates. the true history of our faith. How shadow and flame work together. Study it, master it. Then find those who need this wisdom. The heroes who will fight the coming darkness need priests who understand both sides, who can guide them through shadow and flame alike. The traveling priest accepts the book with trembling hands, its weight greater than its physical mass. Asshai sends shadow binders into the world, the maester says. Melisandre found Stannis. Quai the guides Daenerys. Are there others? The high priest smiles. There are always more. Asshai has watched for 8,000 years. They have agents throughout the world, people positioned to influence events, to nudge prophecy toward fulfillment. Some wear masks, some hide in plain sight, some don't even know they serve Asshai's purpose, but they're there, watching, waiting. And you? The maester asks. The smile widens. I am a servant of Rhea, a guardian of ancient knowledge, a priest of flame. But yes, I was trained in Asshai many years ago, before I came to Volantis, before I took up red robes. I learned shadow arts. I chose to serve flame instead. But I never forgot what I learned in the shadow, never forgot the true purpose of our faith, to prepare the world for the battle coming, to ensure when darkness falls there will be those who know how to fight back. He walks them to the door. Go with the light, but don't fear the shadow. Remember, both are necessary. Both are part of balance. Tell those with ears to hear that Asshai still watches, still guards, still hopes that this time the cycle can be broken, that this long night can be the last. They emerge into bright sunlight. After weeks in Asshai's gloom, the light feels almost painful, but it also feels like hope, like possibility, like proof the darkness hasn't yet won. The traveling priest clutches his book, his faith shaken and rebuilt stronger. He understands now that serving the light means understanding shadow, that being a priest of real means being part of a tradition far older and more complex than he imagined. The maester looks back at the temple, at flames burning on its towers. He thinks of all the red priests across Essos and beyond. How many know the truth? How many understand their faith was born from the same source as shadow magic? And he thinks of Melisandre, powerful and certain, and fundamentally mistaken. She serves the light with all her heart, but doesn't understand that light alone cannot win. That the hero she seeks must embrace both shadow and flame. Someone who can walk through death and return changed but unbroken. Jon Snow's face comes to mind again. The maester doesn't know if he's the one, but he knows Jon is part of the puzzle, a piece that must fall into place if prophecy is to be fulfilled. They must go to Westeros, must find Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen, must tell them what they need to know before it's too late. The long night is coming. Red priests preach it, shadow binders watch for it. The signs gather like storm clouds. And somewhere, heroes are being forged in fire and shadow, preparing for a war 8,000 years in the making, preparing to pay the price Asshai has been paying all along. The price of holding back eternal darkness. The price of hope. The ship crossing the narrow sea rocks gently with the waves. The maester organizes his notes one final time, preparing for what comes next. Everything learned must now be shared with those who can act on it. The priest joins him on deck. I've been studying the prophecies. They're deliberately vague, open to interpretation. How do we know we understand them correctly? We don't, the maester admits. That's the nature of prophecy. It describes possibilities, not certainties. Multiple people could fulfill the requirements. Multiple paths could lead to the same destination. He pulls out a scroll containing the most important passage. When the red star bleeds and the darkness gathers, Azor Ahai shall be born again amid smoke and salt to wake dragons out of stone. The red comet appeared when Daenerys hatched her dragons, the priest says. That seems clear enough. But born again, could mean many things: literal rebirth, transformation, a moment of awakening to purpose. Daenerys walked through fire. If the Red Priests bring back Jon from death, he'll be reborn in his own way. The merchant approaches, his mask catching the sunlight. You're still thinking too literally. The prophecy isn't a checklist. It's a pattern, a description of forces that must align. Both of them matter, perhaps others as well. The Maester nods. House Targaryen has another prophecy. The prince that was promised. Aegon the Conqueror saw it in a dream. The realms must be united under one ruler to survive the coming darkness. That's why he conquered Westeros, not for power but preparation. Two prophecies or one? The priest asks. Different cultures interpreting the same cosmic event. Asshai calls it Azor Asshai. Targaryens call it the prince that was promised. The details differ, but the core remains. Someone must rise when darkness falls. Someone must be willing to make the ultimate sacrifice. The merchant's voice grows thoughtful. The first hero didn't stand alone. He had allies across the known world. The last hero in the north, the Shadowbinders in the east. The Red Priests spreading hope. Victory came from cooperation, not individual glory. 3 heads of the dragon. The Maester says, Daenerys has 3 dragons. The prophecy requires 3 riders. Fire, ice, and something else, the priest suggests. Daenerys embodies fire and conquest. Jon carries both Targaryen and Stark blood, bridging traditional enemies. But the third, the Maester has puzzled over this endlessly. Perhaps someone who understands the balance. Someone who's walked through darkness without being consumed. The prophecy will reveal them when the time comes. They discuss Rhaegar Targaryen, obsessed with prophecy, who changed his entire life based on ancient texts. He thought he was the promised prince, then believed it would be his son. His obsession contributed to Robert's rebellion and the near extinction of his house. He tried to force prophecy, the merchant observes, treated it like a script to follow instead of a warning to heed. That's the danger. You cannot manipulate destiny. You can only prepare and hope you make the right choices when the moment arrives. The priest pulls out the book from Volantis, opening to a marked page. There's another element we haven't discussed, the nature of the sacrifice required. The merchant unwraps a final text from Asshai. Red leather, gold edges, a symbol that hurts to observe directly. The complete account of the first Azor Asshai, not the legend but the truth. The Maester reads with growing horror. The hero didn't simply fight and win. He waged a desperate campaign across years, learned that normal weapons were useless against the White Walkers, forged a blade called Lightbringer, but it shattered twice before he understood what was truly required. The third attempt demanded everything. He called his wife Nyssa. Nyssa. She came knowing what he would ask, and she offered herself willingly because she understood the alternative. He drove the blade through her heart. Her soul, her love, her very essence poured into the steel. Lightbringer burst into flame and never stopped burning. But the cost hollowed him. He saved the world and lost himself. Became a weapon, not a man. Victory was achieved, but joy was impossible. He paid the price, and it destroyed everything that made him human. The priest's voice shakes. This is what awaits whoever fulfills the prophecy. Not necessarily the same act, the merchant says quietly, but the same magnitude. The loss of everything that makes life worth living. Love, hope, future. The hero who saves the world won't survive to enjoy it. Not in any meaningful way. The Maester closes the book carefully. Then who would accept such a fate? Someone who loves humanity more than themselves. Someone who understands that some burdens must be carried regardless of cost. That's why prophecy is specific about character, not just bloodline. It requires someone with the strength to sacrifice everything. They stand in silence, Watching the coast of Westeros grow closer, somewhere ahead, two people are moving toward their destiny. One reborn from death, carrying the weight of true identity. One ruling across the sea, learning what her dragons truly mean. We tell them everything, the Maester decides. Even this, especially this. They deserve to choose with full knowledge of what it means. The merchant nods. Then we go to them. We share what we've learned, and we trust that when the moment comes, they'll have the courage to do what's necessary. The ship sails on. Behind them, Asshai continues its vigil. Ahead lies Westeros, and the final convergence of forces. Between them stretches the unknown future, shaped by choices not yet made. The prophecy is unfolding. The pieces are moving into place. And soon, very soon, the world will learn whether sacrifice and courage can truly defeat eternal darkness, or whether the long night will fall again, this time forever. Before departing for Westeros, the merchant makes an unexpected demand. There's one thing books cannot teach, one truth you must witness with your own eyes. The Maester and priest exchange uncertain glances. Haven't they learned enough? The Shadowlands beyond Asshai, where even our people fear to travel. You must see what we guard to truly understand why we endure. They return to Asshai briefly, receive protective charms from the council, though the eldest warns these offer minimal defense. The shadow transforms rather than kills. 3 days maximum. Beyond that, you may not wish to return. The journey northeast begins at dawn, though Asshai's dawn barely differs from its midnight. With each mile, the darkness deepens unnaturally. Ghost grass appears first, pale stalks towering overhead, swaying without wind. The rustling sounds like whispers in dead languages. The Maester's skin crawls. This vegetation isn't natural. It's aware, hungry, waiting. During the first long night, this grass spread toward civilization's heart, the merchant explains. Prophecy claims when it covers the earth, all life ends. It hasn't grown in millennia because we contain it. If our seal breaks, it spreads again. They pass through the fields for hours. The whispers intensify. The priest mutters prayers that sound weak and swallowed by the oppressive atmosphere. Beyond the grass lie ruins from the great empire of the dawn. Crystal and stone buildings still glow faintly, remembering lost sunlight. Statues with wrong proportions stand eternal. Watch, dry fountains, dead gardens. Millions lived here once. Families raised children. Artists created beauty. The Bloodstone Emperor's corruption ended it all in 1 generation. They camp in the ruins that night. Sleep is impossible. The darkness here presses physically against them. Thick as water, sounds bend strangely. Shadows move independently of any light source. The second day brings them to the deepest shadow. Light behaves impossibly. Their torches burn but illuminate nothing. The temperature plummets without natural cause. The merchant leads them to something massive rising from the earth. Black stone, raw and unworked, like a wound in reality itself. The same material forming Asshai's buildings, but here it's primal, dangerous. Where the Bloodstone Emperor performed his rituals, where he worshipped the fallen stone, where he shattered the world's fabric. Up close the Maester sees patterns within the stone, swirls of darkness and light frozen in eternal conflict, and faces. Thousands of screaming faces trapped in the rock. His sacrifices, the priest whispers, their souls imprisoned forever. Their suffering repeated endlessly, the merchant corrects. This is what happens when you grasp powers meant to remain untouched. He thought he could control it. Instead, he unleashed near annihilation. The Maester studies it with scholarly detachment, fighting against visceral horror. This is the origin point. Not just Westeros suffered. Here, one man's ambition broke the world. They continue to an observation point overlooking vast emptiness. Not ordinary darkness, but something worse. A black so absolute it causes physical pain to observe. The actual breach, the merchant says, pointing. Where reality tore open, the 5 forts guard from this side. Our shadow binders maintain the seal through constant ritual, but it weakens yearly. The strain grows. With the stars aligning as they did before, it's opening again. The maester stares into that abyss, and something stares back, something vast, hungry, utterly alien. His mind recoils, but not before understanding the true scale. This isn't an army, it's the antithesis of existence itself. A force seeking not conquest, but unmaking, to return everything to void. The White Walkers are connected to this, he realizes. 2 wounds, east and west, ice and shadow, different faces of the same corruption. The first hero defeated the western threat, while we sealed the eastern breach, temporarily. Wounds not properly healed will reopen. The priest has collapsed to his knees, overwhelmed. How can mortals fight this? By accepting you must become more than mortal, the merchant answers. By understanding victory requires transformation. You cannot defeat this darkness while remaining unchanged. That's what the first hero learned, what whoever fulfills prophecy must learn again. They retreat from the cliff, but the knowledge follows them. On the 3rd day, returning toward Asshai, the merchant shows them a field of stone eggs, hundreds, partially buried in cursed earth. Dragon eggs, the last clutch from dragons that lived in the shadow after Valyria fell. They won't hatch here. Darkness has made them dormant, but removed from this place, given to the right person, exposed to fire and blood and sacrifice. Daenerys's eggs came from here, the priest says. 3 went west, others remain scattered throughout the shadow, waiting for when they're needed. Dragons exist in shadow and flame both. They can fight darkness without being consumed, but they need riders. They need the 3 who can guide them. They reach Asshai as the 3rd day ends. The maester looks back one final time. Ghost grass singing, ruins standing silent, and beyond it all, that terrible patient darkness. Now you understand what we face, the merchant says. What we've always faced. What we face until the very end. Now you can tell those who need to know. The enemy isn't just White Walkers or the Night King. It's something far greater, far older, far more terrible. Half measures won't suffice. Victory requires everything or nothing remains to fight for. The maester nods, this knowledge settling into his bones. He's seen the heart of darkness, looked into the abyss, witnessed what the Bloodstone Emperor unleashed, and what Asshai has contained ever since. They prepare to leave the next day. The merchant won't accompany them further. His place is here, continuing the vigil, but he's given them everything they need. Find them, he says as they board their ship. Jon Snow and Daenerys, whoever the 3rd will be, tell them what they must know. Prepare them for what's required, and pray they have the strength, because if they fail, there's no second chance. Darkness will consume everything, and our vigil will have been for nothing. The ship pulls away. Asshai recedes into mist, that city of eternal twilight, that guardian at the world's edge. They carry knowledge that could drive men mad. Secrets kingdoms would kill to possess or suppress. Truth about the long night, dragons, prophecy, and the price of salvation. Ahead lies Westeros, where the final act will unfold, where fire and ice must unite, where heroes will either rise to meet destiny or fail and doom everything. The weight settles over them like a shroud, but they don't turn away, cannot. They've seen too much, know too much. The burden is theirs now. They'll carry it to the end, whatever that end may be. The voyage to Westeros takes weeks. The Maester spends the time organizing everything into a coherent narrative. The priest studies his texts, preparing to share truth with those who can handle it. Both men have been transformed. There is no returning to who they were. They make port at White Harbor, that bustling northern city where merchants trade goods from across the world. Inquiries reveal Jon Snow serves as Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. They secure horses and ride north toward Castle Black. The journey takes them through Stark territory. The Maester observes these people, their resilience, their acceptance of hardship as simply life. These are descendants of the first men who fought the White Walkers before. Memory lives in their blood, even if their minds forgot. As they ride, the priest voices his concern. We carry knowledge that could save or destroy. How do we know who to trust? We trust the pattern, the Maester says. Jon and Daenerys aren't random. Their bloodlines, positions, very lives have prepared them. We simply provide the final piece. They reach Castle Black as winter tightens its grip. The wall looms above, that massive ice structure stretching horizon to horizon. The Maester feels history's weight. This wall was built after the first long night, built with magic and sacrifice and thousands of laborers. But they arrive to chaos. Jon Snow is dead, murdered by his own brothers. His body lies in storage, cold but uncorrupted. The Night's Watch is leaderless, torn apart by the betrayal that killed their commander. Melisandre is there. The Maester recognizes her from descriptions. She stands over Jon's body, uncertain, faith shaken. She believed Stannis was the hero. She was wrong. Now she doesn't know what to believe. The priest approaches carefully. We come from Asshai. We carry knowledge you need. Her eyes narrow, suspicious, but she recognizes a fellow servant of R'hllor. Asshai, I trained there long ago. What could you possibly know that I don't? The truth about your power, about what you serve, about who Jon Snow really is. They speak for hours privately. The priest shares everything the high priest in Volantis revealed. Melisandre listens, her ancient face growing troubled. She's been so certain, so sure of her interpretations. Now she must confront being wrong about everything. If Jon matters to prophecy, she says slowly, perhaps I can bring him back, as Thoros brought back Beric. But I don't know if I have sufficient power, if my faith is strong enough. Your faith has always been strong, the priest tells her. What you lacked was understanding. You tried forcing prophecy instead of serving it. You sought glory instead of truth. But now you can serve correctly. Bring back someone who truly matters, not because you declare it, but because prophecy and bloodline and destiny converge in him. Melisandre performs the ritual, speaks the words, calls upon R'hll's power, pours everything into the attempt. For long moments, nothing happens. Jon's body lies still and cold. Then he gasps, eyes open. He draws breath and lives. But something is different. The Maester sees it immediately. Jon has died and returned, and the experience changed him. There's a hardness in his eyes that wasn't there before, a distance as if part of him remained beyond the veil. This is resurrection's price. Life, but altered, existence, but diminished. They give Jon time to recover, to adjust to living again. Then the Maester requests private audience. They meet in the Lord Commander's quarters, just the three of them. We've come from Asshai, the Maester begins. We've learned things you must know about who you are, about what's coming, about the role you must play. Jon listens as they explain everything. His true parentage, son of Rhaegar and Lyanna. The prophecy of Azor Ahai, the long night returning, and the need for fire and ice to unite, dragons and shadowbinders, and the terrible cost victory demands. His face remains impassive throughout, but the Maester sees each revelation's impact. This is a man who already died once, already lost everything, learning he's not Ned Stark's bastard, but the legitimate heir to the throne should be world-changing. But for Jon, it's simply one more burden on shoulders already carrying too much. "Why me?" Jon asks when they finish. "Because your blood makes you a bridge between Targaryen and Stark, fire and ice, south and north. You're uniquely positioned to unite forces never united before, to ride a dragon which requires Valyrian blood, while being trusted by the North, which never trusted Targaryens. And Daenerys has the dragons. She does, and she'll need allies. Someone who understands both North and South. Someone who's faced the White Walkers and knows the true threat. You must go to her. Unite your causes. Alone neither can win. Together you might have a chance." Jon walks to the window, staring at the wall. That massive structure protecting the realms of men for millennia. He died defending it, gave everything for the Watch. Now he learns the Watch isn't enough. The wall isn't enough. The wall isn't enough. Everything he's done is just preparation for a greater battle still coming. "The Night's Watch vows end at death," he says quietly. "I died. I'm released from my vows, free to choose my own path." "What will you choose?" the priest asks. Jon turns back. In his eyes the Maester sees something that gives hope, not certainty, but determination, not enthusiasm, but acceptance. This is a man who understands duty, who proved willing to sacrifice for the greater good, who paid the ultimate price once and might be willing to pay again. "I'll do what must be done," Jon says. "Find Daenerys, unite North and South, fight the darkness with whatever weapons are available. But I make no promises beyond that. I can't promise victory, can't promise survival. I can only promise I'll do my duty to the end, whatever that end may be." Relief washes over the Maester. This is the answer they needed. Not false bravado or reluctant acceptance, but clear-eyed commitment to a necessary task. Jon may not be prophecy's complete fulfillment alone, but he's part of it, an essential part. "One more thing," the Maester says, pulling out the final document describing Lightbringer's true forging. "You must understand what victory will cost. The first hero forged his sword by driving it through his wife's heart, sacrifice of what he loved most. Whoever fulfills prophecy will face a similar choice, not necessarily the same act, but the same magnitude, loss of everything that makes life worth living." Jon's expression doesn't change. "I've already lost everything, already died. What more can be taken?" "More than you know," the priest says gently. "Hope, love, the possibility of future. You may survive the war and still lose yourself, may save the world and be unable to enjoy it. This is the price Asshai pays. What they understand that we're only now learning. Victory is not the same as happiness. Survival is not the same as living." Jon nods slowly. "Then I'll pay that price if I must. Better to save the world and lose myself than keep myself and lose the world. Isn't that what duty demands?" The Maester has no answer. This is prophecy's terrible logic, the unbearable calculus of sacrifice. Someone must pay, someone must pay. Someone must bear the burden. And Jon, who already died once, who already gave up everything, is willing to give even more. They spend the next days preparing for Jon's departure. He secures supplies, gathers loyal men, prepares to leave the wall behind. The Night's Watch will continue without him. The North will manage. His duty now lies elsewhere. Before they part, Melisandre speaks with Jon privately. The Maester doesn't hear what passes between them, but he sees the change in her afterward. She's found purpose again, not as kingmaker or prophet, but as guide. someone who can help Jon navigate the path ahead. "Thank you," she tells the priest before they leave. "You've given me what I lost. Clarity, understanding of my true purpose. I'll serve the light. By acknowledging shadow, I'll help Jon become what he must be, whatever that costs us both." The maester and priest watch as Jon rides south with his companions, a man reborn, carrying the weight of terrible knowledge. He goes to find Daenerys to unite fire and ice, to prepare for the final battle against eternal darkness. "Do you think he can do it?" the priest asks quietly. "I think he's willing to try," the maester answers. And sometimes willingness is all that matters. Prophecy doesn't guarantee victory. It only guarantees the attempt will be made, that someone will stand against darkness even when standing seems impossible. That's all Asshai ever asked, all they ever hoped for, someone willing to carry the burden they've carried all along. They turn their attention south, where Daenerys builds her power, unaware of the true scope of what approaches. She too must learn the truth, must understand her role, must be prepared for what's ahead. The pieces are moving into place. Prophecy is unfolding, and somewhere in Asshai, Shadowbinders watch and wait, hoping that after millennia of vigilance, the cycle can finally be broken. That this long night can be the last. The maester and priest turn their attention south. Jon rides to his destiny, but the other half of prophecy must also be prepared. Daenerys rules in Meereen, unaware of the true scope approaching. They take ship from White Harbor, sailing east then south. The journey takes months, giving them time to refine their message. How do you tell someone they're prophesied to save the world? How do you explain salvation requires unimaginable sacrifice? Word reaches them as they sail. Daenerys faces challenges in Meereen, struggles with ruling, conflicts with tradition and power. But she endures. Her dragons grow larger, more powerful. People call her Misa, Mother, breaker of chains. She frees slaves and topples ancient powers, reshaping the world according to her vision of justice. But she doesn't yet grasp the true nature of what approaches. She sees her dragons as weapons, as symbols of her claim. She hasn't grasped. There's something far more important, the key to fighting darkness itself. They arrive in Meereen to find the city in transition. Daenerys has made difficult choices, balanced mercy with strength, learned bitter lessons of rule. She receives them in her pyramid, this young queen with old eyes, flanked by advisors and protectors. The maester studies her carefully. She has the Targaryen look, silver hair and purple eyes, but also something more, a presence, an authority born not from birth but from experience. She's walked through fire, literally and figuratively, lost everything and rebuilt from nothing, freed cities and claimed dragons, and refused to compromise core principles even when compromise seemed the only path. "You come from Asshai," Daenerys says, her voice carrying quiet strength. "Few travel so far, fewer return. What brings you to my court?" "The knowledge?" the maester says simply. "Knowledge of your true purpose. Knowledge connecting your dragons to ancient prophecies and the fate of the world itself." Interest kindles in her eyes. Daenerys has always sought knowledge, always questioned, always pushed beyond what others accept as truth. She dismisses her court, keeping only closest advisors. Tyrion Lannister, her hand, Missandei, her loyal friend, Grey Worm, commander of her Unsullied, and a figure in shadows the maester recognizes immediately. Quaithe, the Shadowbinder from Asshai. She's been guiding Daenerys, providing cryptic warnings and advice. She nods to the visitors, acknowledging fellow servants of ancient truth. They tell Daenerys everything about the long night's return, about Asshai's vigil spanning millennia, about her role in prophecy, about Jon Snow and his true identity as her nephew. Daenerys listens without interruption, face revealing little, But the maester sees impact in the tightening of her jaw, straightening of her spine, fire that kindles behind her eyes. When they finish, she stands and walks to the window overlooking her city. I've always known I was meant for something greater than simply reclaiming my family's throne. The dragons proved that. They hatched for me when no dragon had lived in over a century. They grew strong when everyone said they would die. They're not just my weapons or symbols, they're my purpose. They're more than that, Quaithe says, speaking for the first time. Her voice carries Asshai's accent, muffled by her mask. They're the bridge between fire and shadow, between life and death, between the world as it is and what it must become to survive. You awakened them, but you don't yet understand what they truly are. Then help me understand, Daenerys says, turning back. The priest steps forward. Dragons aren't creatures of fire alone. They were born in the shadow in Asshai, long before Valyria existed. They embody both flame and darkness, both creation and destruction. To ride them effectively, to use them against the true enemy, you must embrace both aspects. You must walk through shadow as well as flame. The enemy, Daenerys says, the White Walkers. I've heard stories from the north, corpses that walk, eternal winter. But these seemed like tales to frighten children. They're real, the maester confirms, and they're only one face of the darkness. In the far east beyond Asshai, beyond the Five Fords, another breach exists, another wound in the world. White Walkers are creatures of ice. Demons of the night are creatures of shadow. But both serve the same ultimate darkness. Both seek to unmake the world and return it to void. Tyrion has been listening intently, his clever mind racing. Then the Game of Thrones, the wars for power in Westeros. They're all meaningless compared to this threat. Worse than meaningless, the maester says. They're dangerous distractions. While great houses fight amongst themselves, the true enemy gathers strength. The living waste resources, killing each other, while the dead prepare to kill them all. Daenerys returns to her throne, settling into it with new understandings. Wait. You say Jon Snow is my nephew, that he carries both Targaryen and Stark blood, that he's faced the White Walkers and knows the truth, and you say we must work together, unite our causes. Yes, the priest confirms. You represent fire and the breaking of chains, the will to reshape the world. Jon represents ice and duty, the will to sacrifice for others. Together with a third we don't yet know, you form what's needed. And what does prophecy say about the cost? Daenerys asks quietly. The maester shares the story of the first hero, of Nyssa and Lightbringer, of the sacrifice that saved the world and destroyed the hero. He doesn't soften truth or offer false comfort. Daenerys deserves full knowledge of what may be asked. When he finishes, Daenerys is silent for a long time. Finally she speaks, voice barely above a whisper. I've already lost so much. My husband, my son, my home, my innocence. I've walked through fire and blood to reach this point. And you tell me I may have to lose even more. That final victory may require me to sacrifice everything I have left. Not may require, the priest says gently. Will require. This is prophecy's nature. This is the price always demanded. Now that choice comes to you, and to Jon, and to whoever the third will be. Daenerys closes her eyes. The maester sees her struggling with this knowledge's weight, the burden of understanding what her purpose truly means. But when she opens her eyes again, they're clear, resolved. Then I'll pay that price, she says firmly. I didn't wake dragons from stone to play at ruling. I didn't break chains of slaves to forge new chains for myself. I didn't walk through fire to be afraid of darkness. If this is my purpose, if this is what the world requires, then I'll do it, but on my terms, with my eyes open, knowing exactly what I sacrifice and why. Tyrion looks at his queen with something like awe. You speak of sacrificing everything, as if it were simply another decision. It is, Daenerys says, the most important decision, the only decision that truly matters. I can spend my life trying to reclaim the Iron Throne, trying to rule kingdoms, trying to break every chain, or I can accept that some things are more important than thrones or kingdoms or even my own life. The world must survive. That's the first priority, the only priority. Everything else is secondary. The Maester feels hope stir. This is the answer they needed. Not reluctant acceptance, but fierce commitment. Jon rides south even now, he tells her. He'll find you eventually. When he does, you must unite your causes, combine your strengths. His knowledge of the North and White Walkers, your dragons and your army. Together you stand a chance, apart you both fail. Then I'll wait for him, Daenerys says. And when he comes, we'll discuss how to save the world. Not as enemies, not as rivals for a throne, but as allies against the true enemy, as family, though we've never met. Quaithe steps forward from the shadows. My work here is nearly done. I've guided you as Asshai commanded, planted seeds of truth, warned of dangers. Now you have full knowledge. Now you understand. When the time comes to face darkness, remember that shadow is not evil. It's necessary. Don't fear to embrace it when you must. Understanding passes between the two women. Thank you for watching over me, for preparing me. I won't forget. The Maester and priest prepare to leave. Their mission is complete. They've told Jon and Daenerys everything they need to know, prepared them as much as any mortal can be prepared. The rest is up to them, up to prophecy, up to choices they'll make when darkness finally comes. Before they depart, Daenerys asks one final question. Asshai, the city that sacrificed everything, will they fight when the time comes, or will they simply maintain their vigil while others die? They'll fight, the Maester promises. When the final battle begins, when all forces converge, Asshai will send its Shadowbinders. They'll stand with you against darkness. Millennia of preparation leading to one moment, one chance to break the cycle forever. They won't miss it. Daenerys stands, and everyone recognizes the moment. The Queen has become something more, not just breaker of chains or mother of dragons, but bearer of prophecy, someone who understands the true scope of what's coming and has chosen to face it anyway. Then tell them, I'll be ready, she says. Tell them that when Jon arrives, when the pieces are in place, when the moment comes, I'll do what must be done. I'll ride my dragons into shadow and flame both. I'll embrace darkness if necessary to defeat it, and I'll pay whatever price the world demands for its survival. The visitors bow and take their leave. As they exit the pyramid, the priest speaks quietly. Do you think they can do it? Jon and Daenerys, can they truly save the world? I think they're willing to try, the Maester answers, and I think they understand the cost in a way few ever have. They're not naive heroes seeking glory. They're people who already lost everything and found strength to continue. If anyone can bear prophecy's burden, it's them. They walk through Meereen's streets, seeing changes Daenerys wrought, former slaves walking free, children playing without fear, a city slowly healing from centuries of cruelty. This is what she fights for, not power or thrones, but the simple possibility that people might live without chains. And what of us? The priest asks. Our part in this story, is it finished? The Maester considers, we've delivered the knowledge, prepared the heroes, but the war is still coming. We must return to our own lands, spread truth to those who can hear it, prepare as many as possible. The Maesters of the Citadel must be told, even if they refuse to believe. The Lords of Westeros must be warned, even if they dismiss it. Every person who understands truth is one more potential ally, when darkness falls. They book passage on a ship returning to Westeros. As they sail, the Maester writes everything down, a complete record of their journey, discoveries, the knowledge gained in Asshai. This document must survive even if they do not, must be preserved for future generations who might need to face darkness again. Because that is the final lesson Asshai taught them. The long night is not a singular event, but a cycle. It has come before, it will come again. Unless this time, someone finds a way to break the wheel, to heal the wounds permanently, to end the cycle once and for all. That is what Jon and Daenerys must accomplish. Not simply to defeat the White Walkers and darkness, but to seal the breaches so completely they can never open again. To finish what the first hero and Asshai began millennia ago. Weeks later, they arrive back in Westeros. The realm is in chaos. Kings and queens fight for power. Houses betray each other. The Game of Thrones continues while the true enemy gathers strength beyond the wall. The Maester travels to the Citadel, presenting his findings to the Archmasters. Most dismiss him as deluded. His stories too fantastic to credit, but a few listen, a few understand, and those few begin quietly preparing, sending ravens north, warning those who might believe. The priest returns to his temple, teaching what he learned to fellow servants of Rola, not the simplified version for common believers, but deeper truth. That shadow and flame are not enemies, but complements. That prophecy is not destiny, but possibility. That victory requires sacrifice beyond imagining. And in Asshai, Shadowbinders continue their eternal vigil, watching the stars, monitoring the seal, preparing for the moment when they'll be called upon to fight one final time. They have waited millennia. They can wait a little longer. The pieces are in motion. Jon rides south, carrying the burden of his true identity. Daenerys prepares in Meereen, understanding now what her dragons truly mean. The White Walkers march beyond the wall. Darkness stirs beyond the five forts. And somewhere, a third walks their own path, unknowing. Perhaps Tyrion with his sharp mind and rumored bloodline. Perhaps Bran with his mysterious powers and connection to ancient magic. Perhaps someone else entirely, waiting for the moment when destiny will reveal them. The Maester finishes his manuscript on a cold winter night. He looks out at the stars, seeing the same patterns as Asshai's Shadowbinders watch. The alignment is nearly complete. The celestial signs that preceded the first long night are appearing again. The war is coming. Not the war for thrones or kingdoms, the real war. The war that will determine whether humanity survives or falls into eternal darkness. The war that prophecy has warned about for millennia. And for the first time in all those ages, the pieces are finally in place. Dragons have returned. The heirs of ice and fire both live and know their purpose. Shadowbinders stand ready. Red priests preach truth instead of comforting lies. It may not be enough. Prophecy doesn't guarantee victory. But for the first time since the long night ended, there is genuine hope. Hope that this cycle can be broken. That darkness can be defeated, not just pushed back. That all the sacrifices over millennia might finally lead to permanent victory. The Maester seals his manuscript, making arrangements for copies to be sent to every major library, every great house, every place where knowledge might be preserved if the worst happens. This is his contribution, not fighting with steel or magic, but with words and knowledge, ensuring truth is not lost again. That future generations, if there are future generations, will understand what happened and why. He thinks of Asshai one last time, that dark city at the edge of the world, that city of sacrifice and shadow. For millennia they've stood guard while the rest of the world forgot. They've paid the price so others did not have to. They've maintained the vigil even as they were feared and reviled. But now, Finally, their sacrifice might mean something more than just postponement. Now there is a real chance to end this, to heal the world, to ensure no future generation must make the choice Asshai made. That is worth any price, worth any sacrifice, worth everything they have endured. The Maester closes his eyes and prays, though he is not certain to whom he prays. To Rola, perhaps, to the old gods of the north, to whatever force guides prophecy and protects the world from utter darkness. He prays that Jon and Daenerys have the strength to do what must be done, that they find each other and unite their causes, that the Third reveals themselves when needed, that the dragons prove mighty enough to face darkness, that Asshai's vigil has not been in vain. And he prays that when the price is demanded, when sacrifice is called for, whoever must pay it finds the courage to do so, because that is what everything depends on. Not prophecy or power or magic, but one simple human choice, the willingness to give up everything for a world that will never know what you gave. That is what Asshai taught him. That is the final truth. Heroism is not about glory or recognition. It is about doing what must be done even when no one will thank you, even when no one will know, even when the cost is everything you are and everything you might have been. The darkness is coming, but so is the dawn, and between them stands a choice, a sacrifice, a hope that this time, finally, the long night can end forever. Years pass. The Maester grows old in the Citadel. His manuscript copied and distributed, though few believe it. The priest continues his work, teaching the deeper truths to those ready to hear them, and across the world, events unfold as prophecy suggested they might. Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen meet. Just as foretold, the circumstances are complex, the path difficult, but they find each other, fire and ice. Dragon and wolf, Targaryen and Stark. Two parts of a puzzle, 8,000 years in the making. The wars continue. The Game of Thrones plays out with all its cruelty and ambition. But beneath the surface, deeper currents move. The White Walkers march south. The dead rise. The living are forced to confront what they dismissed as legend. And slowly, painfully, the realm begins to understand. The true war is not for thrones or kingdoms. It is for survival itself, for the right to continue existing in a world not consumed by eternal darkness. The Maester receives word from the north. The battle has begun. Jon Snow leads the armies of the living against the Night King and his forces. Daenerys fights beside him, her dragons breathing fire into the frozen night. The Red Priests work their magic. The Shadow Binders sent from Asshai channel their powers, everything and everyone converging on one desperate moment. He does not know the outcome. Word travels slowly, and by the time news reaches the Citadel, the battle will be long over. Either the living have won, or the darkness has consumed them. There is no middle ground, no compromise possible. The Maester climbs to the highest tower of the Citadel on a cold winter night. He looks north, toward where the battle rages. He cannot see it from this distance, but he feels it. The weight of 8,000 years of preparation coming to fruition, the moment when everything will be decided. He thinks of Asshai, of that dark city standing eternal vigil, of the Shadowbinders who sacrificed their humanity so others could keep theirs, of the masks they wear, and the price they pay, and the burden they have carried for longer than any mortal should have to endure. Are they fighting now? Have they sent their warriors to the final battle? Or do they remain at their posts, maintaining the seal in the east while the west burns? He hopes they fight, hopes they get to be part of the victory they have prepared for so long. But he understands if they do not, their duty is the seal. Always has been, always will be until the breaches are healed or the world ends. The stars wheel overhead, ancient and indifferent. They have witnessed countless rises and falls of civilizations, countless wars and peace. They will continue long after humanity is gone, whether that is tomorrow or 1,000 years hence. But tonight, under these stars, humanity makes its stand, not for glory or power, but for the simple right to continue existing, to see another dawn, to have children who will see dawns after that, to break the cycle and end the long night forever. The Maester thinks of everyone who brought them to this moment. Asshai, who forged Lightbringer through the sacrifice of his beloved, Asshai, which became darkness to fight darkness. The Shadowbinders, who gave up everything over 8,000 years. The Red Priests, who kept the faith alive. The Builders of the Wall and the Night's Watch, who stood guard for millennia. The First Men and the Children of the Forest, who fought the first long night. All of it leading here. All of it converging on one desperate battle in the frozen north. He thinks of Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen, two people who never asked for this burden, but accepted it anyway, who learned the terrible cost of prophecy and chose to pay it, who understood that victory might mean losing themselves and decided the world was worth that price. He wonders about the third head of the dragon. Did they reveal themselves? Did they take their place in the prophecy? Or did events unfold differently than anyone predicted, as prophecy so often does? He will never know all the details, will never see the full picture. He played his part, delivered the knowledge, prepared the heroes. The rest was up to them, and to forces beyond mortal understanding. The night grows deeper, the cold more intense. Winter is here, in full force, just as the Starks always warned. But the Maester does not feel afraid. He feels at peace. His work is complete, his duty fulfilled. Whatever happens now, he did everything possible to help. He thinks of a conversation he had with the merchant in Asshai, what feels like a lifetime ago, about the nature of heroism, about doing what must be done even when no one will thank you, even when no one will know, even when the cost is everything. That is the truth, at the heart of everything. The lesson Asshai embodied for 8,000 years. Heroism is not about glory, it is about sacrifice, about choosing the hard path, because it is the right path, about paying the price so others do not have to. Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen understand this now. They have walked the path, paid the prices along the way, and now in the final moments they will make whatever choice is necessary, even if it destroys them, even if they cannot survive to see the world they save. That is enough. That is all anyone can ask. That is all the world deserves. The Maester descends from the tower. As dawn approaches, the sun rises slowly, hesitantly, as if uncertain whether it should bother. Winter has made days short and nights long, but the sun still rises, still fights against the darkness in its own way. He returns to his chambers and adds a final entry to his manuscript. Not the ending, because he does not know the ending yet, but a meditation on hope, on the possibility that this time the cycle can be broken, that this long night can be the last. He writes about Asshai and what they have taught him, that endurance is its own form of heroism, that maintaining hope across 8,000 years of darkness is perhaps the greatest magic of all, that sacrifice given willingly is more powerful than any sword or spell. And he writes about the future, if there is a future, about the world that Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen might save, a world where the breaches are healed, where the darkness is sealed away permanently, where Asshai can finally remove their masks and return to being human instead of guardians. He writes about children who will never know how close they came to never existing, about summers that will come without the shadow of long night hanging over them, about people who will live and love and die without ever understanding the sacrifices made on their behalf. That is the world worth fighting for. Not a perfect world, but a possible one. Not a world without darkness, but a world where darkness does not consume everything. A world where the dawn always comes, even after the longest night. The Maester sets down his pen. His hands are shaking, whether from age or emotion he cannot say. He has written everything he knows, preserved everything he learned, done everything he could. Now he waits, as Asshai has waited for 8,000 years, as the world has waited since the first long night ended, for word from the north, for news of victory or defeat, for the answer to the question that has hung over humanity since the beginning. Can the darkness be defeated? Can the cycle be broken? Can sacrifice and courage and love be enough to save the world? He does not know. No one knows. That is the terrible beauty of free will. The outcome is not written. The future is not fixed. Everything depends on choices not yet made, on sacrifices not yet given, on heroes not yet tested. But he has hope. For the first time in his long life, studying history and seeing how often humanity fails, how often the same mistakes are repeated, he has genuine hope, because this time is different. This time the heroes understand the cost. This time the preparation has been thorough. This time the pieces are in place. This time, maybe, just maybe, the long night can end forever. The sun climbs higher, weak but persistent. The Maester watches it from his window, this ancient star that has witnessed everything, that shone during the first long night, and continued shining through 8,000 years of Asshai's vigil, that rises now over a world balanced on the edge of salvation or annihilation. He thinks one final time of Asshai, of that dark city standing eternal watch, of the people who chose to become shadow so others could remain light, of the sacrifice that has defined them for longer than most civilizations exist. And he understands finally and completely what they have always known, that some duties never end, that some vigils must be eternal, that some sacrifices must be made again and again across the ages. Not because the first sacrifice was insufficient, but because the world is always in danger, always threatened, always in need of guardians willing to stand in shadow so others can dance in light. Whether the long night ends forever or only for another age, that truth remains. Someone must watch. Someone must guard. Someone must be willing to pay the price. That is Asshai's gift to the world. Not magic or prophecy or ancient knowledge, but the example of unwavering dedication, of duty maintained across impossible spans of time, of hope sustained even in absolute darkness. The Maester closes his eyes, exhausted but at peace. He has done his part, written his truth, played his role in a story far larger than himself. Now he can rest, knowing that whatever happens, he contributed to the possibility of victory. That is enough. That is everything. Outside his window, the world continues. People live and struggle and hope. The Game of Thrones plays out. The wars continue. And in the north, the battle for the dawn rages on. But here, in this quiet moment, the Maester finds something precious. Not certainty, but acceptance. Not answers, but peace. Not the ending, but contentment with having done everything possible to reach a good ending. That is all any mortal can do. All any hero can be asked to try, to sacrifice, to hope, and to trust that sometimes, just sometimes, trying is enough. The sun shines through his window, weak winter light, but light nonetheless, and the Maester smiles, thinking of Asshai standing guard at the edge of the world, still watching, still hoping, still believing that the dawn will come. Because it always has, and maybe, this time, it always will.